Lives, and we're carrying on next week with lives. In case you don't know, my name is Nick Haralambis, and I'm on a mission to help 1 million people start side hustles. We've got some free launch events coming up on the 28th, 29th, and 30th of August, which is tomorrow and Sunday and Monday. With me today is Gordon. He is one of the cohort 2 students from the Side Hustle Academy. Gordon, thanks for joining me.
Hi, how you doing?
Cool, very well. So let's kick off by you telling everybody who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'm the founder of a emergency response app called Safer, and which we've recently launched in South Africa. Ultimately, we'll dominate the world, but yeah, one step at a time. So yeah, that's who I am, and that's what got me interested in what you were doing, and I guess
Cool. And
carrying from there.
I think that's the interesting thing for me chatting to you and getting to know you is you weren't necessarily looking to launch a side hustle. And that's why I'm kind of interested in talking to you today, because the things that I have learned and the things that I try and teach people about business aren't necessarily only applicable to side hustles. So what was the reason you decided to leap in on a side hustle program versus anything else you found?
A couple of things. I mean, I think, as I said to you in one of our first calls, to a certain extent, I felt like I was a imposter syndrome, a different thing, but that I'd come in under false pretenses because of the fact that I wasn't specifically looking for a side hustle. I was really wanting to validate the work that I'd done up until then, and I guess just getting a community around me to check that what I was doing was right. So. I'd been following a lot of your stuff for many years. I mean, in early business, I even used a Nick Harry box as a template for what we were doing. So, and there's 100 lessons in that as well, but different story, I guess. But so for me, really, it was saying, well, I'd reached a point where I was doing pretty much everything on my own, and I needed to really get a community around me that would validate what I was doing and make sure that I was on the right track. And this did exactly that. I mean, it delivered far more than I expected. So
that's great. Awesome to hear. I mean, it is definitely one of the things that I'm even learning, even though I've learned this lesson multiple times, is you got to surround yourself with people you want to be like, and people trying to share your vision and do things that you're trying to do. Often I get told, my friends don't believe in my idea, or my partner doesn't think I should start this business. And my advice is always very aggressive. Well, then they're the wrong friends, or that's your wrong partner. So it's nice that you've found a community. So what were the main takeaways for you that you could apply to your own business, knowing that it wasn't a side hustle, you were starting from scratch? I mean, we do cover a lot of marketing, advertising, sales. So, what were the valuable parts for you aside from the community?
I think actually probably to digress slightly from the question, it wasn't even about the business. There's so much of it that's around lifestyle, that's around managing myself better, time management, personal management, and so on. So there was a lot of that came in, which quite honestly I wasn't expecting. I was really wanting to check that I was on the right track with the business, speak to more people. To a certain extent, I guess I was jealous in that my wife who's in the business with me, had quite a lot of groups that were supporting her and that she was learning loads from. And unfortunately, I was missing that. So for me, it was really difficult that I felt more isolated. So the community did that. Yep. So yes, I learned loads of business stuff, but at the same time, it also gave me personal growth that I think was equally important towards moving the business forward.
Yeah, and I think I recall in one of our one-on-one sessions that comes with the Online Side Hustle Academy, we actually discussed your sleep habits and how yourself and your wife kind of keep each other up all the time. And I was like, no, this is the bad thing. You guys have to sleep properly. And I think in the follow-up one-on-one, you actually had rectified a lot of the issues and were feeling better. So, I mean, talk to me about the longevity of those lessons, like sleeping properly, eating properly, and how you've kind of fixed that into your life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was really just being aware of the problem. I think is really the best way of addressing anything. If you know you've got a problem, you can try and work through it. So that's a good start. And then from there, it was, I mean, it's definitely not something that I'm succeeding in. I mean, I think last night was like 4 hours again. But on the whole, it's being far more aware of saying, well, if I haven't had a good night's sleep, how is it affecting my day? And so I think it's really that awareness of it has been probably my biggest sleep takeaway, and then looking at saying, well, what can we change? What can we do better? And on the whole, it's improved significantly. Last night was fortunately an exception, and it stands out as being an exception rather than saying, well, it was what used to be our norm.
Yeah, I think being aware of it, and often I like to tell people, a friend of mine, Howard Mann's quotes, "You can't read the label from inside the bottle." So a lot of what I do is just try and show you your own label so that you can have perspective on the things that might break if you don't pay attention to them, like your mindset, like your sleep, like all those things.
Yeah, exactly, and it resonated a lot with me, and I think also that the fact that it made me realize that I'm not in any way alone in the problem. I mean, everybody seems to have sleep problems, so I think it's pretty general. But when you're in a position where there's a hell of a lot going on in your head at any one time, it's really difficult to switch it off, and you do tend to wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, thinking, I haven't done this, I need to do that, and forget to do this or that. So yeah.
Yeah, I know that you also got a lot of value out of listening in on the weekly group coaching calls. So, I mean, maybe talk to me a little bit about like how those feel and like how you felt when you joined the first one with 30 other people doing the same thing. Like, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was interesting actually, because to a certain extent, I thought I'm going to come in and I'm going to be learning things that I already know, and kind of looking for nuggets of information within what else was going on. And instead, I was learning so much from other people's journey. I'd like to believe that for some of the people, I was able to add some input that was useful for them as well. And we're still in touch with quite a few of the people. But at the same time, I watching somebody else's journey is equally valuable to me. I tend to always have learned more by watching than by studying. And I have teachers that will call me up on that. Well, not anymore, but back in the day. So for me, seeing and it's massively encouraging to see the success as other people do things, and to a limited and very small extent, but to say, okay, well, cool, they listened to what I said, and that's been good for them. So I found those calls extremely useful, although I definitely didn't engage as much as some of the members. I just learn loads by listening.
But I think that one of the things to point out is you might not have engaged on the calls, but then you went to the community channels that we've got and you would engage there and add so much value. And like, you are one of the people that did add value because you've got so much experience, because you've been doing this for so long. And a lot of the people in the cohort had never started a business. So it was nice to have you also back up a lot of what I'm saying, like, go out and sell more. It'll be okay. Just try harder. And you've got all that experience to back that up too, which, more people in the community adds more value. So, I mean, I appreciate it and thank you for that.
Cool. It gives me pleasure. So I have no interest in being a coach, but it's interesting that in some ways I probably have a temperament for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know that a lot of community members commented on that to me. So a couple of questions in closing. What would you have said to yourself before you committed to pay the money to do this program? If you look back, what would you say to yourself just before to convince you to get going on this program?
Just do it, basically. I was in maybe a very fortunate position that it just hit me completely at the right time. It means that obviously your targeting was spot on, I guess, as well. As I mentioned, I've been following your stuff for years, literally. So I did the masterclass, the pre-session that you did, and I was like, "Oh, this speaks to me." It was a simple decision. I mean, literally, I hit the pay button straight away, and I was join or whatever the call to action button was at the time. made the payment, it was done, and it just resonated. So I think it was everything that you were talking about on the masterclass addressed exactly what I was looking for at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. Maybe my targeting is just so good. And then the last question is, what would you say to anybody starting a side hustle today who's never done it before, is a little bit scared? Like, what advice would you give them?
A couple of things. The one of my big takeaways, I think, from the side hustle course was minimum viable product. I just think of it as MVP. It sounds wrong when I put it into whole words. And that has been one of my biggest hangups, in that I tend to be a perfectionist, and so we end up finding that it's really quite often necessary to go and look at what we can do to make sure that everything is perfect. And it tends to be one of the biggest stumblers in that, it's like, oh, I'm not going ahead with doing this because I can't decide on my logo, or my packaging is not right, or something. And to hell with that, just get something out there. In our particular case, yes, it may be an excuse, but because of the nature of our product, it has to be perfect. It's not a question of saying, well, go out there and you can reboot the app if you're in trouble. We're providing an emergency response that needs to be 100% all the time. So from a response and app point of view, that wasn't ever an option. But I know that we've spent far too long on building websites and tweaking the tiniest shade of color. And it's like, this isn't right, or changing a word here or there. And that's it's just wasted time. You need to get out there and you need to get it done. And so my best, I think the most relevant thing for a side hustle is, if you've got an idea, try it. Put it out there. The worst that's going to happen is everybody is going to say, this is really crap. It's never going to work. And then you decide for yourself, are they worth listening to or not? If you still believe it's a valid idea, take your validation course and get outside people. But, take advice from people who would benefit from whatever it is that you're offering, rather than necessarily friends and family who often don't see the value in what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, bang on. And that's exactly why the whole genesis of this idea for me was to take your idea and in 6 weeks get you to make your first sale. Because if you can just get over that stumbling block of the anxious awkwardness of trying to make that first sale, the rest is easy. That awkwardness goes away when you've made your first sale. So I love that advice. And Gordon, thank you so much for giving me your time.
Pleasure.
And we look forward to seeing you in the alumni group calls every week with the new cohort. So
yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that. I think I picked up just somewhere in the last few days, probably Pranesa's interview about it, and I'm really keen to get probably more value than I got the first time around, because although I have some idea of what you're going to be talking about and what the course content is, it's a whole new bunch of people, a whole bunch of input that will be different again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
That's exactly the idea. And also, you guys are now 3 or 4 months into your side hustles. You're much further on, so you can give advice to the new cohort. So I'm really looking forward to this new mix of people. And we look forward to seeing you in the calls. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. See you next week.
Yes. So that was Gordon. My name is Nick Haralambous. I'm on a mission to help 1 million people start a side hustle. And if you want to be one of them, look in the links below this video, head to my profile. There is a registration link. The events are happening on the 28th, 29th, and 30th of August. And then the new cohort starts early in September. So join me and let's build your side hustle together.